Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
The first sign that the world had tilted on its axis was the light. It was the same pale yellow morning light that always filtered through my blinds, but it felt different, thinner. Somehow, I blinked it away, a groan rumbling in my chest as I rolled over. 7:00 a.m. School. The thought was as heavy as my blanket. I'm Ethan, 17 years old, and for 17 years, my morning routine had been a ritual of comforting monotony. Swing legs out of bed, stumble to the closet, pull on the same rotation of worn-out jeans and faded hoodies, and try to feel human before my mom started yelling about breakfast. But that morning, the second sign appeared. As my feet hit the floor, I noticed the usual pile of yesterday's clothes was gone. I never cleaned my room. Mom must have finally had enough and tidied up. I shrugged, shuffling toward the closet, my hand already reaching for the familiar wooden handle. I pulled the door open, and my brain simply stopped working. There was no blue denim, no grey cotton, no black band logos. My entire wardrobe, a carefully curated collection of male teenage apathy, had vanished. In its place was a universe I didn't recognize. Pastel. Skirts in soft, pleated fabrics hung in a perfect, orderly line. Blouses with delicate, puffy sleeves and tiny pearl-like buttons were arranged by color. Soft knit cardigans in shades of cream and rose lay folded on the shelves where my sweatshirts used to be. On the floor, where I kept my sneakers, sat a neat row of Mary Janes and simple, elegant flats. I stood there, frozen, the cold wood floor seeping into my bare feet. It felt like I'd woken up in someone else's life, a girl's life. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. A prank. A mistake. Had my older sister, Emma, somehow moved her entire wardrobe into my room while I slept? That made no sense. A soft click from the doorway made me jump. My mum stood there, her arms crossed, a look on her face I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was deliberate. Resolute. Mum, what is this? Where are my clothes? I added, my voice cracking with sleep and disbelief. She took a step into the room, her gaze sweeping from the closet's contents to me. Her expression was calm, which only made the situation feel more insane. Good morning, Ethan, she said, her voice even. We're going to try something new. Something new. This is my sister's entire wardrobe. Did you two switch our rooms as some kind of joke? Emma's clothes are still in her room, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. These are for you. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. The silence stretched, filled only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. I felt a hot flush of confusion and anger creep up my neck. What are you talking about? I finally managed to say, my voice trembling slightly. These are girls' clothes. I can't wear this. That's when she walked over, stood beside me, and looked at the alien collection of fabrics. She reached out and touched the sleeve of a soft white blouse. You're not going to be a boy today. Ethan, she said, her words dropping into the quiet room like stones. From now on, I want you to try living as a girl. Trust me. My jaw went slack. The air left my lungs in a rush, leaving me dizzy. I looked from her eerily calm face to the closet, then back again. This wasn't a joke. She was serious. A cold, heavy dread settled in my stomach. No, I whispered. Absolutely not. This is insane. Give me back my clothes. I'm not asking. Ethan, she said, her tone hardening just enough to let me know the discussion was over. All your old things are packed away. This is what you have now. So, you can either stay in your pajamas all day and miss school, or you can pick something out. Tears of frustration and helplessness pricked at the corners of my eyes. I felt like a cornered animal. My own mother, the person who was supposed to be my safe harbor, was doing this to me. Why? She must have seen the panic in my eyes because her expression softened slightly. Just for a while. Sweetie, I have my reasons. Please, just try. My will crumbled. I knew that look. There was no winning this fight. Defeated. I turned back to the closet. My body moving as if through water. My hands trembled as I scanned the clothes. My mind a whirlwind of shame and humiliation. What was I supposed to choose? It all looked so foreign. So wrong. I finally pointed a shaky finger at the plainest things I could find. A simple white blouse and a navy blue skirt that looked like part of a school uniform. Fine. I choked out that. A good choice, she said. As if I'd just picked out a new shirt at the mall. She laid the clothes on my bed, and then, to my horror, she stayed, watching me. I can dress myself, I mumbled, my face burning. I know, she replied gently, but this is new. You might need help. There was no escaping it, with my mother's eyes on me. I peeled off my t-shirt. The cool air of the room hit my bare chest, and I felt a fresh wave of vulnerability. I picked up the blouse. The fabric was impossibly soft and thin, unlike anything I'd ever worn. It felt like holding a cloud. I fumbled with the tiny buttons, my clumsy fingers struggling to push them through the small, stitched holes. The material glided over my skin, cool and smooth, clinging in a way a t-shirt never would. Next was the skirt. I dropped my pajama pants and stepped into it. The waistband was snug, sitting higher on my waist than my jeans ever did. I pulled it up, and the pleated fabric fell around my thighs, swishing softly. I stood there, motionless, acutely aware of the bare skin on my legs and the strange, light feeling of the garment. It felt airy, unprotected. I instinctively moved to put my hands in my pockets, only to find there were none. My arms hung awkwardly at my sides. My mum stepped forward. "Turn around," she said softly. I did as I was told. My shoulders hunched. She smoothed the collar of the blouse and then gently ran her fingers through my shaggy hair, tucking a few strands behind my ear. "You know," she said, her voice wistful, "you look so much like Emma did at your age." Her words hit me harder than a slap. I wasn't me anymore. I was a pale imitation of my sister. I finally dared to look in the full-length mirror on my door. A stranger stared back. It was my face, my eyes, but the context was all wrong. The soft collar of the blouse framed my neck, making it look longer, more slender. The skirt flared out from my waist, completely erasing the familiar lines of my body and replacing them with a shape that wasn't mine. I saw a boy playing dress-up, a pathetic, confusing figure, but beneath the shame, a tiny, treacherous thought flickered a spark of something I couldn't name. It wasn't pleasure. Not yet. It was a terrifying, electric hum of pure, unfiltered curiosity. Who was this person in the mirror? And what was happening to me? Breakfast was a silent, agonizing affair. I sat at the table, my knees pressed so tightly together my muscles ached. Every slight movement sent the skirt whispering against my skin. A constant reminder of my new reality. I couldn't look at my mom. I just stared at my cereal. The spoon feeling foreign in my hand. I felt like I was wearing a costume. And at any moment, someone would jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But no one did. This was real. When I finished, my mum stood up and grabbed her purse. "Come on," she said brightly. "We're going to the grocery store." My blood ran cold. What? No, I'm not going out like this. "Ethan, this isn't a game we're playing inside the house," she said, her tone firm again. "The whole point is to experience it. We just need a few things. It won't take long. It's the best way to get used to the feeling of being seen." Being seen. I hissed, my voice low and desperate. "I don't want to be seen." I want my jeans back. She just jingled her keys, her expression unwavering. I was trapped. Arguing was pointless. Following her to the front door was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Each step felt like a betrayal of myself. She handed me a pair of simple, white sneakers from the new collection in my closet. At least they weren't heels. I slipped them on. The fit surprisingly perfect. The moment I stepped outside, the world felt different. The gentle morning breeze, which I'd never paid attention to before, suddenly felt incredibly intimate as it drifted up my bare legs, chilling the skin beneath the hem of the skirt. It was a sensation of such profound vulnerability that I almost turned back. The weight of the skirt shifted with every step, the fabric swaying against my thighs. My cardigan, a soft beige knit, smelled faintly of lavender, a scent so unlike my own that it made me feel like an imposter in my own body. The walk to the store was only a few blocks, but it felt like miles. I kept my head down, my hair falling into my face, hoping to become invisible. I was convinced every passing car was slowing down to stare, that every person on the sidewalk was whispering and pointing. I could feel their imaginary eyes on me, burning holes into my skin. My face was flushed, my palms were sweaty, and my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. We entered the bright, sterile environment of the grocery store. The fluorescent lights seemed to hum with judgment. I walked stiffly behind my mom's cart, trying to make myself smaller. Then it happened. "Oh my gosh. Hi, Mrs. Miller." I froze. The voice belonged to Sarah, a girl from my school who lived down the street. She was bubbly and friendly, which, right now, made her terrifying. My mum turned, smiling warmly. "Sarah, hello, how are you?" "I'm great. Just grabbing some snacks." Her eyes flicked from my mom to me, and I braced for impact. I prepared for the laugh, the pointing, the confused, disgusted look. But it never came. Instead, her eyes widened slightly, and a genuine, curious smile spread across her face. She looked at me for a second longer, a little tilt to her head. "Wow," she said, her voice soft. "You look so cute." My brain short-circuited. Cute! She was talking to me. I couldn't process it. My face, already flushed with shame, turned a shade of crimson I didn't know was possible. I mumbled something incoherent and stared at the floor tiles as if they held the secrets to the universe. "This is my niece, Emily," my mum said smoothly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "She's staying with us for a while." Emily. The name echoed in my head. It was so simple, so effective. It was a shield. Sarah's smile widened. "Oh, that's so cool. It's nice to meet you, Emily." I managed a weak nod, unable to speak. The lie hung in the air, thick and suffocating. But it had worked. Sarah hadn't seen a boy in a skirt. She'd seen a shy girl named Emily. She chatted with my mum for another minute before waving goodbye. "Hope I see you around. Emily," she called over her shoulder as she walked away. I stood there, paralyzed, my heart hammering for a completely different reason now. The fear of being exposed was still there, but it was now tangled with a new, strange emotion. Sarah hadn't laughed. She'd smiled. She'd called me, cute. It was a compliment I'd never received as Ethan, and hearing it as Emily sent a dizzying, illicit thrill through me. It was a tiny, dangerous spark in the overwhelming darkness of my humiliation. The fear of being discovered was slowly morphing into a different kind of anxiety, the fear of what would happen if she ever found out I was a boy. And deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I felt a confusing, exhilarating flutter. For the first time, I had been seen not as Ethan, the awkward boy, but as someone else, someone pretty. The feeling was terrifying, but it was also undeniably magnetic. The days that followed blurred into a strange and structured re-education. My mom, it turned out, was not just an enforcer, she was a teacher. The project of turning Ethan into Emily became her singular focus. and I was her unwilling, yet captive, student. "Emily, dear, we don't sit like that," she'd say gently as I slumped onto the couch. "My legs naturally falling apart, knees together. It's more graceful." I would reluctantly press my knees together, the posture feeling forced and unnatural. It changed how I held my entire body, making me sit up straighter, my back tense. Walking was another lesson. Don't stomp. "Ethan, Emily," she corrected herself. "Softer steps. Let your hips move naturally. Don't fight the sway of the skirt. Walk with it." She made me practice walking across the living room, back and forth, until the clumsy, rigid march of a boy in a dress softened into something resembling a more fluid, lighter gait. I became intensely aware of my own body, of muscles I'd never thought about, of the subtle shift in balance required to move with a feminine grace that felt utterly alien. Then came the voice lessons. "Softer, dear. Speak from a little higher in your chest. Not a fake falsetto, just less gravel." We'd practice greetings. "Hello, how are you?" I'd say in my normal voice. Again. She'd insist. Softer. "Hello, how are you?" I'd repeat. My voice feeling thin and weak, it sounded pathetic to my own ears, but she would nod in approval. The sartorial lessons grew more advanced, moving beyond the simple skirt and blouse. One afternoon, my mom came into my room with a small, beautifully wrapped box. "I thought you might need these," she said. I opened it. Inside were things I'd only ever seen in department store ads. A collection of soft, simple bralettes in muted colors, with no underwire or padding. Beside them were packages of delicate, silky underwear that were decidedly not boxer briefs. My face burned. "Mom, I can't, this is too much." "It's part of the complete picture." "Sweetie," she said, her tone matter of fact, "you can't have the straps of an undershirt showing under a nice blouse, and these will be much more comfortable under a skirt." The first time I put one on, my hands shook. The bralette was just a slip of soft, stretchy cotton. It felt strange against my chest alight. Constant pressure that was both barely there and impossible to ignore. It made me hyper-aware of my own torso, of the way the fabric of my shirt now draped. Differently over the thin straps, it was a secret layer, a hidden piece of the puzzle that made the illusion on the outside feel more real on the inside. The lessons weren't just about restriction, they were about addition. She showed me how to wear sheer stockings, the impossibly fine nylon whispering against my legs as I carefully rolled them up. She taught me how to tie a silk scarf around my neck. A small touch that transformed a simple sweater into an outfit. I was being disassembled and rebuilt, piece by piece. The angry, defiant Ethan was still there, screaming inside my head. But his voice was getting quieter, drowned out by the constant, gentle instructions and the undeniable physical reality of my new existence. The true turning point came a week later. The doorbell rang, and my mom called out, "Emily, could you get that, please?" My stomach lurched. I had been Emily inside these four walls, but I hadn't faced anyone else since the grocery store incident. I smoothed down my pleated grey skirt, took a deep breath, and opened the door. It was Chloe, my sister Emma's best friend. Chloe was everything I wasn't confident, effortlessly cool, and beautiful in a way that always made me feel clumsy and invisible when I was Ethan. She had a mischievous sparkle in her eye that could be both charming and intimidating. Her eyes widened as she saw me. She knew who I was. Of course, there was no Emily lie that would work on her. I braced myself for the inevitable teasing, the mocking questions. But Chloe just smiled, a slow, appraising grin spreading across her face. She looked me up and down, from my neatly combed hair to the Mary Janes on my feet. Well, she said, her voice a playful purr. "Emma told me your mum was trying something creative, but wow." She stepped inside, her eyes still fixed on me. I felt like a butterfly pinned to a board. "You're actually... Really convincing, she continued, circling me slowly. Turn around. Feeling like a doll on display. I did a slow, awkward turn. She mused. The posture needs a little work, but the outfit is adorable. Your mom has good taste. She reached out and tucked a stray piece of my hair behind my ear. Her fingers were warm, and the brief, light touch on my skin sent a jolt straight through me. It was such a casual, sisterly gesture, but it felt intensely intimate. I flinched, my cheeks flushing. Chloe laughed softly. Don't be so tense. You look cute. There was that word again. Cute. Coming from Sarah. It was a polite surprise. Coming from Chloe. With her knowing, teasing smile, it felt like something else entirely. It felt like a validation that sent a confusing mix of shame and pride through my veins. Emma has a total mini-me now, she said, poking my shoulder gently. A little brother who turned into a little sister. I didn't know how to respond. The anger I should have felt, the indignation at being treated like a plaything, was being smothered by a strange, budding sense of enjoyment. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't deny the thrill of being seen this way by her. The shame was still there, a constant companion, but it was no longer alone. It now had to share space with a new, tentative awareness, the beginning of a reluctant acceptance. And maybe, just maybe, the faintest hint of liking the girl in the mirror. The fragile bubble of my new reality confined to my home and the occasional, nerve-wracking trip to the store was about to burst. I had managed to avoid school for a week, my mum calling in with a vague story about me being sick. But my time had run out. You're going to school tomorrow. Emily, my mum announced one evening at dinner. I dropped my fork. It clattered against the plate, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. No way. I can't. Everyone knows me there. They'll tear me apart. They know Ethan, she corrected me calmly. They haven't met Emily. You'll be introduced as my niece, who's just transferred. It's a big school. Most people won't even notice. But my friends will, I pleaded, my voice rising in panic. Lucas will know me. He'll tell everyone. Then you'll have to be convincing, she said, her logic as unyielding as a brick wall. This is the biggest test. Ethan, if you can get through this, you can get through anything. The night before was sleepless. I lay in bed, the soft satin of my nightgown feeling like a cage. Every possible horrible scenario played out in my head, the pointing, the laughter, the whispers, the outright cruelty. By morning, I was a wreck, my stomach in knots. My mum, however, treated it like the first day of kindergarten. She had an outfit laid out for me, a soft, pastel pink sweater that hugged my frame just enough to suggest a shape that wasn't there. A short white pleated skirt, and the same Mary Jane shoes I now wore almost daily. Then, Chloe showed up. Emergency makeover session, she announced, holding up a small bag filled with cosmetics. No niece of Mrs. Miller is going to her first day looking like a scared rabbit. Before I could protest, I was sitting on my bed while Chloe worked her magic. I had never been this close to her. I could smell her perfume. A light, floral scent. Her touch was gentle as she brushed a hint of blush onto my cheeks. It just gives you a little color, see, she said, holding up a mirror. Makes you look less like you're about to face a firing squad. She applied a tiny bit of mascara, making my eyelashes look longer and darker, and finished with a swipe of tinted lip balm that made my lips feel soft and look slightly pink. When I looked in the mirror, the face staring back was different. It was still me, but the small changes had softened my features, making Emily seem less like a costume and more like a real person. The panic was still there, but now it was mixed with a terrifying flicker of confidence. The car ride to school was silent. My hands were balled into fists in my lap. When we pulled up, my mum turned to me. Just be quiet, be polite, and stick with the story. You'll be fine. Walking from the car to the front doors of the school was like walking a tightrope over a canyon. Hundreds of students were milling about, a sea of familiar and unfamiliar faces. I kept my head down, my new slightly longer hair falling like a curtain around my face. The short skirt felt impossibly revealing, and I was sure every single person was staring at my legs. A few heads did turn. A couple of junior guys I vaguely recognized looked my way, their conversation pausing, but their expressions weren't mocking. They were curious. One of them nudged the other, and I heard a low murmur. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone wasn't hostile. It was appreciative. My stomach did a nervous flip. Inside, the noise of the main hallway was deafening. I felt small and exposed. My mom led me to the administration office, where she signed me in as Emily Miller, a new transfer student. The woman at the desk, Mrs. Davison, smiled at me. "Welcome to Northwood High." "Dear," she said, her eyes kind. "We're happy to have you. I'm sure you'll make friends in no time. She's a pretty one." She handed me my schedule, and the use of the pronoun, the casual she, felt both like a punch to the gut and a strange sort of victory. The lie was working. The illusion was holding. Then, as I walked out of the office and into the crowded hall, I saw him, my best friend, Lucas. He was standing by his locker, laughing with some other guys from the basketball team. For a second, I thought I could just walk past him, that he wouldn't see me in the crowd. But our eyes met. His laughter died in his throat. His eyes widened, his expression shifting from amusement to utter, unadulterated shock. He saw right through the blush, the skirt, the hair. He saw me. "Ethan," he mouthed, his voice too quiet to be heard over the din, but his meaning was crystal clear. I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. The world seemed to narrow to the space between us. His friends were looking at him, then at me, their faces full of confusion. This was it, the moment I had been dreading. He was going to call me out. The whole school would know. The humiliation would be absolute. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there, pinned by his gaze, waiting for the world to come crashing down. My carefully constructed identity as Emily was about to be shattered into a million pieces by the one person I thought I could always count on. Run. My brain screamed, but my feet were rooted to the floor. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Lucas's face was a canvas of disbelief. He took a half step toward me, his mouth opening and closing as if he'd forgotten how to form words. The other guys with him were now staring openly, their curiosity piqued by his reaction. Then, something unexpected happened. Lucas snapped his mouth shut. He shook his head slightly, as if clearing it, and his shocked expression was replaced by a look of profound, troubled confusion. He didn't shout my name. He didn't point or laugh. He just, stared, his eyes asking 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Taking my chance, I broke eye contact, turned, and walked away as fast as I could, without running, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could feel his eyes on my back the entire way down the hall. I didn't look back. The rest of the day was a blur of heightened anxiety. I sat in the back of every class, my head down, speaking only when spoken to. A few teachers welcomed Emily to the class, and a couple of friendly girls tried to make small talk, which I deflected with shy, one-word answers. Every whisper, every laugh I heard in the hallway felt like it was directed at me. But the public humiliation I had feared never came. Lucas kept his silence. When I got home, I collapsed onto my bed, emotionally exhausted. The facade had held, but barely. The encounter with Lucas had shaken me to my core. That evening, my mom came into my room. She found me sitting by the window, still in my school clothes, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange that reminded me of my new wardrobe. "How was your first day?" "Sweetie," she asked softly. "Terrifying," I whispered, not looking at her. I saw Lucas. He knows. She was quiet for a moment. Then she sat on the bed beside me. And what did he do? Nothing, I admitted. He just looked at me. Maybe your friends are more understanding than you give them credit for, she suggested. A surge of anger, born from a day of fear and suppression, finally broke through. Understanding. Understanding what? Mum, why are you doing this to me? You said you had your reasons. I think I deserve to know what they are. Why are you trying to turn me into my sister? She sighed. A long, heavy sound. She looked older in that moment. Her face etched with a weariness I hadn't seen before. I'm not trying to turn you into Emma, she said, her voice gentle. I'm trying to help you find you. I just stared at her, confused. Do you remember when you were little, she began. Around 5 or 6 years old, Emma had this trunk full of old dance costumes. Princess dresses, tutus, sparkly things. You loved that trunk more than she did. You'd spend hours in her room, trying on her skirts, draping scarves over your head. You told me once that you wanted to be a beautiful princess, just like her. The memory was hazy, buried under years of conscious effort to forget. But as she spoke, faint images surfaced, the feel of scratchy tulle against my skin, the sight of myself twirling in front of Emma's mirror, the pure, uncomplicated joy of it. As you got older, she continued, you started to understand that boys weren't supposed to like those things. You saw how other boys acted. You started to hide that part of yourself. You pushed it down so deep. I think you forgot it was even there. You became so quiet, so withdrawn, always in the background, trying not to be noticed. I've watched you struggle. Ethan, I see the stress in your shoulders, the way you never seem comfortable in your own skin. You built walls around yourself so high you couldn't see over them. Tears welled in her eyes. I made a drastic choice. I know. Maybe it was the wrong one, but I was so scared I was losing you. I thought if I could just break down those walls, if I could force you to confront that part of yourself you've been hiding from for so long, maybe you could finally be whole. Maybe you could stop being so afraid and just be. Her words hung in the air, rearranging everything I thought I knew. This wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a cruel game. It was a desperate, misguided, but loving attempt to save me from myself. The anger I had been clinging to for weeks began to dissolve, replaced by a profound, aching confusion. Was she right? Had I been hiding? The memory of the little boy in the tutu felt like a ghost, a phantom limb. I never knew I'd lost. I didn't know whether to scream at her or hug her, so I did neither. I just sat there, watching the last of the light fade from the sky. The experiment was no longer something that was being done to me. It was now something I had to confront within myself. The shame and fear were still there, but now they were joined by a question. Who was I, really? Later that night, long after my mum had gone to bed, I stood in front of my mirror. I looked at the reflection of Emily, with her soft sweater and her faintly blushing cheeks. For the first time, I wasn't just seeing a boy in a costume. I was seeing a possibility. Slowly, I began to unbutton my sweater. I changed out of my school clothes and into a simple satin slip that my mom had bought me. The fabric felt cool and smooth against my skin. It was freeing. I looked in the mirror again. I saw the outline of my body, softened by the drape of the satin. I saw my own eyes, wide and searching. I wasn't Ethan anymore, not completely. But I wasn't Emily either. I was someone in between, lost in the space that my mother had created. And for the first time, instead of fighting it, I wondered what it would feel like to explore it. I started to brush my hair, not because I had to, but because I wanted to see how it looked. I adjusted the thin straps of the slip on my shoulders. I was no longer just following orders. I was starting to participate. The weeks that followed were a quiet transformation. The daily routine of being Emily became less of a performance and more of a second skin. I learned the subtle rhythm of it, The morning ritual of choosing a skirt and top, the light touch of Chloe's makeup lessons, the way I automatically tucked my hair behind my ear. My interactions at school settled into a strange new normal. Lucas avoided me, but his silence was a protective shield. He never told anyone my secret. His distance hurt, but I understood it. How could he possibly comprehend what was happening to me when I barely understood it myself? The other students accepted Emily as the shy, quiet, new girl. The boys looked at me with a kind of gentle curiosity I'd never experienced as Ethan, and the girls offered friendly, inclusive smiles in the hallways. I was no longer invisible. I was just softly present. I found myself discovering small, unexpected pleasures. The feeling of a soft wool skirt swishing around my knees on a cool day, the way a pretty cardigan could make me feel put together and secure. The simple satisfaction of my hair being neat and tidy. These were tiny moments of peace in the midst of my inner turmoil. The war inside me was shifting. The part of me that was Ethan, angry, ashamed, and desperate for his old life, was still there. But his voice was growing fainter. He was being replaced by Emily's quiet curiosity. She was the one who found herself looking at clothing websites in the evenings, wondering which colors would look best on her. She was the one who felt a small thrill when Chloe taught her how to do a simple braid. One Saturday afternoon, my mum walked into my room and saw me sitting at my desk, sketching in a notebook. I was designing an outfit, a simple dress with a cinched waist. I slammed the notebook shut when I saw her, my face flushing. She smiled gently. "You don't have to hide that from me." She sat on the edge of my bed, her expression serious. "Ethan, Emily, I think the experiment has served its purpose. I see you changing. You're more present. You're calmer." She took a deep breath. "Your old clothes are in a box in the attic. If you want them back, you can have them. You can go back to being Ethan tomorrow if you want. The choice is yours now." Her words should have been a lifeline, a get-out-of-jail-free card, the moment I had been dreaming of for what felt like an eternity. I should have jumped up, overjoyed, and said, "Yes, thank you." But I didn't. I sat there in silence, my heart pounding. The thought of putting on my old baggy jeans and hoodies felt wrong. It felt like putting on a costume. Just as the skirts and blouses had at first, the idea of going back to being the invisible, anxious boy I was before felt like a step backward. It felt like a loss. My mum watched me, her eyes patient, letting me process the monumental choice she had just laid before me. After a long, silent minute, I looked up at her, my voice barely a whisper. What if I don't want to stop?" A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but she was smiling. It was a smile of relief, of love, of understanding. "Then you don't have to," she said softly. "Then you just keep being you." That night, the decision felt sealed, not by her words, but by my own actions. I stood before my open closet, the rows of feminine clothes no longer looking like a prison, but like a palette of possibilities. I wasn't being forced to choose an outfit. I was simply getting dressed. I chose a new dress I hadn't worn yet, a simple dark blue A-line dress made of a soft, flowing material. As I pulled it over my head, the fabric slid over my skin, cool and liberating. I reached behind my back to pull up the zipper. My fingers fumbled with the small metal tab, a familiar little struggle. As the zipper closed, the dress settled perfectly around me, the fabric hugging my torso before flaring out at my waist. There was a quiet click as it fastened, and in that sound, I felt a sense of finality, of rightness. I looked in the mirror. Emily smiled back. It wasn't a forced or shy smile, it was real. Just then, there was a light knock on my door. It was Chloe. She often came over on weekends to hang out with Emma, but more and more, she'd stop by my room first. "Hey," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Wow. New dress." "Yeah, I said, my voice soft. My mum got it for me. It looks really good on you, she said, her voice sincere. She walked over, her eyes scanning the dress. You just need one more thing. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a delicate silver barrette, shaped like a leaf. Here, turn around. I turned, my back to her, my heart starting to beat a little faster. I felt her fingers in my hair, carefully gathering a small section from one side. Her touch was so gentle, so deliberate. She clipped the barrette in place, her knuckles brushing against the side of my neck. A shiver went down my spine. There, she whispered, her voice close to my ear. Perfect. I turned back to look in the mirror. The silver clip shimmered in my hair, a tiny, beautiful detail that completed the picture. Chloe was standing right behind me, our eyes meeting in the reflection. She wasn't smiling her usual teasing grin. Her expression was softer, more serious. You know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think I like this version of you better. Her hand came up and rested for a fleeting second on my shoulder. It was a light, simple touch, but it felt electric. It was a touch of acceptance, of affection, of something more that I didn't dare to name. In that moment, looking at the girl in the mirror with the silver clip in her hair, I felt the last remnants of Ethan's anger and shame finally, truly, let go. The decision was made, not in a grand pronouncement, but in the quiet, everyday choices that followed. The choice to keep my hair a little longer. The choice to wear a skirt to school. The choice to answer to Emily without flinching. It was a gradual unfurling, like a flower turning toward the sun. One rainy Sunday afternoon, my mom asked me to help her clean out the attic. I knew what it meant. In the corner, under a dusty white sheet, was a large cardboard box. On the side, written in my mom's neat handwriting, was one word: Ethan. We carried it down to my room and set it on the floor. My heart beat a little faster as my mom cut the tape and opened the flaps. Inside, neatly folded, were my old clothes, my faded jeans, my band t-shirts, my bulky, shapeless hoodies. They looked like artifacts from another person's life. I reached in and picked up my favorite hoodie. It was soft from years of wear, the fabric familiar in my hands, but it felt heavy, lifeless. I held it up against myself, the coarse cotton a stark contrast to the soft knit of the cardigan I was wearing. I remembered the way I used to hide inside that hoodie, pulling the hood up to disappear, my shoulders hunched to make myself smaller. It was a shield, but it was also a cage. My mum watched me, her expression unreadable. She wasn't pushing me, just giving me the space to feel. I folded the hoodie and placed it gently back in the box. I looked from the box of drab, muted colors to my open closet, now a carefully organized collection of soft fabrics, gentle pastels and flattering silhouettes. I looked at my hands, my nails clean and neatly trimmed. I looked at my reflection in the window pane, the rain blurring the image just enough to make it seem like a dream. I saw a person with softer lines, a calmer posture, and eyes that were no longer constantly looking at the ground. It was a choice between who I had been and who I was becoming, a choice between hiding and being seen. I looked at my mom and gave her a small, watery smile. I think we can put these away for good, I said, my voice steady. Together. We taped the box shut and carried it back to the attic. Closing the door on that box felt like closing a chapter of my life. It wasn't an angry or sad ending. It was just an ending. Later that day, I sat alone in my room. The quiet hum of the house a comforting presence. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized was possible. The constant, grinding conflict in my head had finally subsided. There was no more Ethan versus Emily. There was just me. I stood up and walked over to my dresser. I tied my hair back with a simple ribbon, the gesture feeling natural and practiced. I was wearing a simple cream-colored sweater and a plaid skirt, an outfit I had picked out myself that morning. As I walked out of my room, the skirt lay gently with each step, a soft rhythmic whisper that had become the soundtrack to my new life. My mum was in the living room, reading a book. She looked up as I entered, a quiet, expectant look on her face. I stood there for a moment, gathering my thoughts. No longer a boy forced into a dress. No longer a girl playing a part. But something new and whole. I finally found the words, and they came out not as a confession or a plea, but as a simple statement of fact. My voice was clear and soft. "Mum," I said, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. I think I've found myself." She closed her book and smiled back, her eyes shining with a love that was so deep and unconditional, it took my breath away. She didn't need to say anything. In that shared, silent moment, I knew I was home. I was finally, completely, me.